Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the recently demonetized, apathetic Prince of Queens channel that feels guilty about not making enough content. But thing is, I actually realized today that one of the things I used to do when I really, really, really made a lot of content, like all the time, is that I used to wake up, not do anything at all religiously, like really, like sometimes I would sit around watching a few videos if I was really, really lethargic, but usually I would try to wake up, drink some caffeine, go for a walk, that kind of a thing, and think of ideas of things I want to write about. And when you drink like a actual caffeine, like the closest I would come would be like kombucha and green tea over the last couple of months. But if you actually just drink a little bit of espresso, like something that has a lot of concentrated caffeine, it really perks you up and gets you thinking. And you can come up with at least a few good ideas to run with. And so I'm going to be doing that. And we're going to see if I get the wind in my sails back because, I love writing. I love putting out a lot of content. I love talking. I love doing that type of thing. But it's just been kind of hard recently with all the stuff that's gone on in my life, but it doesn't have to be that way. I'm not happy unless I'm, productive all the time. And I'm looking into some other things. I got a roommate moving in with me on the 1st for not permanent. It's going to be a month test run. So I'm going to try to get back into the swing of it. So our guest for this week is an old YouTube friend. You might remember him if you are one of the few people that actually tuned into the Game of Thrones predictions session a few, like right before the last episode. It's not really something I normally talk about at all whatsoever, but I felt like doing it because I felt like being right about things and being able to say, ha! And, I kind of came close to being right in a certain sense. Like, I thought that it was going to go to Bronn, and Bronn ended up being one of the surviving leaders. And
no, you wanted it to go to Bronn is what it was. You wanted Bronn to win. It was like,
yeah,
I thought and really believed that it was going to be Tyrion and that it was going to play out way differently.
oh yeah, well,
we haven't tuned in, but it was like a month ago now. Everyone's over it. Blaque
yeah,
did a thing.
yeah, but the thing is that like everybody was disappointed. It didn't make sense to anybody what actually did happen exactly. Though you remember, I definitely said Bran is going to be a key part of it. Like I was
you did say that part, and I was like, well, of course he is. They've been setting him up the whole.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Jamie. Right. My bad.
Wait, what?
It kind of become an interesting.
Jamie's ending is so anticlimactic and like literally all we got out of it was Tyrion Sad Face.
Yeah,
like that's all we got out of Jamie's arc at the end was Tyrion Sad Face. Everyone knew Cersei was going to die. It was a given.
Yeah.
Oh, and he killed Euron, who I didn't care about ever.
Yeah. So, okay. To be perfectly honest, we should definitely move along because I know people don't want us talking about this again. So, you are an old YouTuber. You haven't really been making a whole lot of content or all that many appearances. You have a real life with a jobby job life and girlfriend now and stuff like that. What do you got to say about these types of things at the moment?
These type of things, like the demonetization thing.
No, just you.
Just me. Shoot, I never get asked that anymore, so I'm not used to answering questions like that. So I'm like you said, I do the jobby job thing. I think in some ways I lose more sleep than I used to, but in other ways I go to sleep more often. From when I was creating, because now I'm in the rat race. Like moved up in the company that I thought I was going to work for a year and then go somewhere else. So yeah, things have been kind of crazy. I totaled a car earlier this year and then bought another one. This one's holding fine, but it's 10 years older than the one I wrecked. So that was not dope. But things are going okay. The girlfriend thing fell through, but whatever. That's life.
Oh. Well, you know.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I don't have time that I want to give up to be upset about it at this point. It lasted 3 weeks. It's been 3 weeks. I'm pretty much just back to where I was before the relationship kind of thing. It's like, I hope she's okay and stuff, but I'm back to business.
Well, that's a good attitude to take. You know, a friend of mine was posting on Facebook, and it's funny because, you know, he's in his late 30s and everything, and he was like talking about how he gets really, really attached to his girlfriends, and he you know, sits around obsessing over being texted back and like all these kind of like needy-ish things. And he was like, what do I do to get over that? And you know, there's like some okay advice. There was some really, really bad advice, like people just who don't know how to actually get over that, because it's natural, you know, like everybody gets like that about the things that they really care about. And one of the things that most people really care about is relationships. Maybe not into your late 30s all that commonly in the same type of way, but you know, whatever. And so this one girl was like, get a life. No, I don't mean that insultingly. I mean, like, just make sure that you have a lot going on. And I was like, yes, that is exactly what you do. You embark on something really difficult, like a difficult career path that you're trying to do, and then you'll never worry about this crap again. That's what I did.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually pretty much, if you sum it all up, that's pretty much been the last year or so, is that I have other things that I can commit a lot of my time to, and that I do commit a lot of my time to. And they're things that, I mean, I don't 100% love everything about my job, but it's stimulating. It's interesting to me what I do. And there are challenges that I can just go and handle this. Like, we don't know why the software is doing this, but the programmer said it works. And I was kind of like, no, it works. It's doing the wrong thing. But we're telling it to do the wrong thing, so we just need to change what we're telling it. Like shit like that. That's what I do for work.
It's stealing our soul.
It is. It is, but the one in your pocket is a lot worse than the one in the finance office.
I don't know if I can conceptualize that exactly.
The one in your pocket's going to steal your soul before any desktop has a chance. Your phone.
Oh, okay.
Your phone. And if you don't believe me, look at some of the 5G testing issues that have been out there. Like they tested it in a community. Oh, I could look it up and give you a little more detail.
Okay. Yeah, by the way, I wanted to say that I've been working my way through the Titanfall 2 story mode, and I'm almost through it. And it's kind of cool. It's kind of a cool game. But I don't really want to talk about that because I think that people won't really want to hear about that. But thank you for the recommendation for me to actually re-download it and start playing it again.
Yeah.
Oh, and get your PS4 on your hands so that we can play together. All right.
I will.
All right. So, guys, what do we got in the terms of topics to be talking about this week? In terms of, like, we talk about current events, news, a lot of stuff having to do, like, silly stories having to do with the LGBT community, other happenings like that. That's sort of just how the stream goes.
Yeah, well, I remember there's the big news about the Democrats actually funding some of the wall. It's a few days old at this point, but that's a thing.
Yeah, that's a very big thing. But of course, the progressives are trying to stop it. Surprise, surprise. And they're doing it with like the most, what appears to me transparent intentions. Because what they're claiming their problem with it is that it's going to, I don't know, allocate more money to oppressing the people or something. And so instead they want to give more money to actually helping the people, except for there is a budget for increasing, CBC. And so that the people who are actually in charge of the detention centers and the health care of the illegal immigrants, those people are going to be better staffed, and they don't want these people to die at all. the only ones who have died, like I'm actually writing a video about this, and there was this girl who died in December, but the thing is that she had traveled a very long way. She was exhausted and she was sick, but for whatever reason, probably because the father was thinking to himself something like, "Oh, I shouldn't tell them that she's sick because maybe they'll deport us or something," which is it's an honest mistake. Like I can understand how he wouldn't know. How would he really know how it works? He checked, we're healthy. And then a few hours later, like, she started vomiting probably blood and stuff, and then she died of dehydration and everything. And it's like, okay, well, how many people are there looking after people? How many of the other detained asylum seekers are actually sick? Like, maybe they're looking after those people, things like that. And it's really, really unfortunate, but it's like, that's a problem of being slightly understaffed, if anything.
Well, also it's a bit like a game of human hot potato.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how is it like their fault? Like, she would have died on the other side of the border anyway.
Yeah, it absolutely
it's like really cynical, but I mean, am I wrong?
No.
Well, I'm 100% with you. I think that, unfortunately, people's like, oh, that's such a cynical thing to say. It's like, being cynical and being practical are often a lot more aligned than being emotional and being practical. Okay, so yes, it's sad the girl died, and my condolences to her family and people who knew her. But there's nothing at that point with the timeline of her getting to the border. It would have changed nothing if she would have went straight to a hospital. She still would have died. She was too far gone.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also really unfortunate that if you bring these types of things up to a lot of people, you can just say like, well, hey, what's the real tragedy here is that she was put in this situation where they felt like it was worthwhile to make such a dangerous journey. And, just assuming that everything would be safe on the other side, like she would be, instantly cured, like, oh, it's America, I'm immortal or something, and so you can blame people like the father for pushing on, even though he had such a small little girl in such a dangerous circumstances. And like I just see the white women just being like, oh my god, you blamed the father. You know what I mean? And
yeah, won't somebody please think of the children and all that? It's like, here's the thing. The conversation about what kind of parent her father was doesn't matter to the point of ICE couldn't have saved her. End of discussion. Doesn't matter why. Prior to her arriving at the border, doesn't matter in the equation. The situation she was in at the border is the only thing in the discussion, and that's how I feel about it. Because like the emotional stuff is not part of how we decide policy. The emotional stuff is for human interest fluff pieces and the actual family. Okay?
Yeah, it's like these people, are just so unaware of reality and who actually is able to maintain their health and have proper access to healthcare. I was arguing the other day with this woman about abortion, and I was just saying, basically, I really just started off by saying, I think that women, I don't appreciate entirely pro-abortion people. I think that, like I don't know if you've known about this. You probably don't, Wrath, but over the course of really just the past couple of months, I've started realizing I'm a lot more pro-life than I thought. And it's not entirely a policy thing, like I'd probably be, I don't want, entirely outlawed abortion. I don't think it's realistic. I don't think it would be helpful to our society as a whole. But I think that philosophically, I don't think it's okay to tell one gender, that they have so many privileges that they deserve to decide if their own offspring dies. I think that messes with people in the head, and every woman I've ever known who's had numerous abortions or even just one abortion, they have dramatically felt bad about it, or they try to overcompensate very, very clearly and become this like crazy pro-abortion, pro-choice fanatic, like the Shout Your Abortion people, which I know, like I literally know some of those people, and they're nuts. They're nuts. It's like they're cruel, they're petty, they're vindictive, and I really, really think it comes from this entitlement. So I was basically like starting to get into that, and this woman was like, look, if you don't have a uterus, your opinion doesn't really matter, blah, 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 like the typical stuff. And one of the things she said, she was like, here's the thing. If you haven't been living your entire life, having people examine and look at your vagina and blah, 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 then you really have no right to an opinion about this. And I was like, wait. So you're complaining for having good health care. That is what you're doing right now.
You know, I hadn't thought of that until you pointed it out, but that's super true.
Yeah,
because I've heard a similar argument to that. It's just like, well, you don't understand what a violation of privacy going to the doctor is. It's like, ask your dad what turn your head and cough is. Okay, we don't exactly have fun in there either.
Yeah, it's like you don't want to go. It's like you don't want to go to the doctor. You can go right ahead. Like, I don't know, become Amish or something. I'm not sure which religion. Oh, Christian Scientist. Like,
yeah. It was like, or go be a Scientologist. Okay.
Yeah, it's nuts. So, by the way, anybody just tuning in, remember that you can always hit that like button if you're interested in this. And also you can Streamlabs me. I'm going to open that window right now. Oh, and another thing, real quick, if you're a regular viewer, because I know that there's a regular little crew, small pack of dedicated people who like my channel, even though I'm not really making content at the moment. If you wanted to sign up for my Subscribe Star, only $4.99 a month, I need more people to get a payout, and that'll be really helpful to me right now. So if you could do that, it would be awesome. Thank you very much. Oh, I just clicked Subscribe Star and not Streamlabs. All right. So
on the topic of
yeah,
abortion, I saw a headline that Trump has been given the okay, according to a federal judge, to defund Planned Parenthood for about $60 million or something like that.
Wow.
Good.
I'm of many minds about the subject. I think if Planned Parenthood did what they were supposed to be doing, as far as what services they were and were not providing, and they were not misleading, in my opinion, in some instances, the more well-known ones, they were misleading both patients and staff.
Yeah.
And doing that on government money, I'm sorry, the only way I would be comfortable with cutting their check moving forward would be basically a deconstruction and reconstruction of the entire senior management. Like, operator, everybody, down. Like,
yeah.
If you have C-level in your name to if you have manager in your title, you're done. You're done.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Then we reevaluate. That you basically earn it back. You know, like how you can get your endorsement for a restaurant. You can have your endorsement drop to a letter grade. You have to be reevaluated to go back up. The same should be done here, in my opinion.
Yeah, I entirely agree. I think that, come up with some criteria that'll get all the feminists out. The last thing that anybody needs, especially the women who go in to use Planned Parenthood services, is to have them telling the women, like, oh, it's totally fine to get an abortion. We would prefer you not, but like, we do have services, or whatever they tell them exactly. Because the women I know who have been dramatically negatively affected by their abortions, the things that they said was that they were crushed by it. It made them suicidal for several like for weeks, like completely suicidal, depressed for months. They felt like they had actually killed their own child. This was a fairly late term abortion in terms of like, it was like probably like right at the 6-month mark. And they felt completely awful, and nobody had ever told them about it. And then being that this was a girl living in California and actually San Francisco, everybody around her was leftists, and she had no way of talking about this depression that she was in. Nobody wanted to hear it. And in fact, I imagine that other women would probably freak out on her and get mad at her for talking about her own experience, because that's how committed they are to pretending it doesn't bother them. So I don't think that that's okay. Like, whatever the mechanism is for explaining these things, Planned Parenthood is not doing a good job of it.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's my biggest thing with it, and there are other things that I'm not sure if we want to open that necessary can of worms. There are other things about how the world works that, like, we're writing policies to protect people from having choices or from understanding the consequences of their choices. That seems to be a common theme in the United States and the world as a whole. I mean, the speech rights discussion that's been ongoing throughout most of the world. Taking away speech rights is being done when it's been attempted or when it's been lobbied for. It seems to be almost exclusively in the defense of feelings. Mm-hmm. And my problem with that is we're making weaker people by protecting them from uncertainty, basically. Oh, I would go outside, but what if someone calls me a word I don't like? Well, okay, then you keep walking. Maybe don't even pull your headphones out.
Okay, but have you heard of the new bill that was introduced by the Republican senator from Missouri?
Oh, it's from Missouri. I probably won't like it.
No, you will. You will. It's the perfect, essentially the perfect. Like, if it goes through and remains intact, it would be the perfect bill for internet freedom. It demands, in so many words, it. Remember, did you ever listen to Ted Cruz giving Mark Zuckerberg the prosecuting attorney treatment on the Senate floor?
Yeah, I did. I was really hoping you were going to reference the one where he made the meme crying face, but yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. So it was really great because Ted Cruz actually really knows his stuff and seems to really understand the state of contemporary social media and Google and maybe, journalism and everything. It seems like he's actually on it. He's basically the only guy who really was. But he said, he was like, Mr. Zuckerberg, you say that you're a neutral platform that posts will host anything except for people like Diamond and Silk have had their account removed from Facebook. People like this and this, blah 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 blah. And he like goes on, and he's like, now, are you in the business of giving people a freedom of speech on your platform like you claim that you are, or are you a publisher that is exercising your First Amendment right, which is your right? And he was like, well, I'm not sure if I understand the laws about that. He's like, let me rephrase the question, and it was so good. Well, it's basically in the line of that. These companies can either choose of being like, a telephone business, which is like, you can't deny random people phone services for their views. You just can't do that.
Right.
Or they can decide that they want to go with the publisher model and keep all their rules.
I think that's a fair compromise on basis of existing law, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I think that if the bill were to fail, it could be something that that a lawsuit could be executed, and through precedent, it could be a similar statute could be passed. Now, I think it'd be a lot smoother and a lot less messy, politically speaking, if it goes through as a bill. But legal precedent for things like that have happened, and the basis on which Ted argued do actually fall in line with established laws, not necessarily an alteration to the law. Now, if we need it out and stated directly, then okay, let's add 20 pages to the to the code, which is like a room full of books.
So if you look at the current state, like Apple, out of the big tech firms, has already anticipated this, which is why they've come out publicly saying that they are a publisher with editorial powers.
Yeah, well, I mean, Apple is not really the fish on the frying pan here. You know what I mean? Like,
because they've already taken a side. Like, if there was legislation put out, they've already established themselves as a publisher, where the other ones are trying to play the gray area.
Well, yeah, because
they're trying to avoid...
the only thing Apple really does as a publisher is the like Apple Store and crap like that. It doesn't like have,
well, with their new news program and their new TV app, their arcade games, like they have already censored Alex Jones and all kinds of people and QAnon off of their platform.
Well, of course they have. Here's the thing about
because
Apple.
of their editorial powers.
Yeah, sure, but that's
okay. Apple was doing that before they made that declaration, basically, because with iTunes in the App Store, you have to be approved by Apple to publish to them. Additionally, unless they have the right kind of business relationship, like basically they make Apple a good amount of money because of their relationship, they have to pay Apple to maintain their registration. So to get Alex Jones off of the Apple Store was in all actuality what was changed in their computer system was a checkbox. That just got removed from the store.
Yeah.
Or license no longer valid. Done.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure phone calls and paperwork happen
and
to
they've avoided
record it, but all
over censorship,
Well, I mean, and here's the thing. Yeah, I mean, they basically killed their controversy by stating what they already were doing, and this is how we do business.
Yeah, I'm not worried about Apple. I think that if people,
I'm worried about Apple for the opposite
different reasons. For different reasons.
I think Apple's gonna hurt themselves financially the way they've been acting.
And let them,
be honest. And I'm fine with it. I'm cool with it.
Yeah, no, but I think Apple's not really who I'm worried about, because I want people to go to PCs and stuff. Like, Apples are terrible products, and I am so much happier now that I'm on a PC. And I was on Apples for a long time, really long time. Like well over 10 years of my life was I primarily on Apples. And but the thing is, they don't control the public square. The public square is Facebook, Google, YouTube, and Twitter. And the thing about these companies is that they collude with each other they act as, as a number of people would say, cartels, to sabotage the competition. And
they're all basically the same company. All their employees are all like incestuous. They just move between those companies.
Yeah, to a very, very large degree. Absolutely. And so the thing is that, like, they shouldn't have the right to actually shape public opinion and then claim, it's like, oh yeah, no, people just really like Contrapoints. People just didn't like Alex Jones. Like, no, that's not so simple. You guys set it up that way. And within the bill, part of it includes people not being able to actually the companies not being able to derank or sabotage recommendations in the ways that they very actively do. I believe there's a specific clause about that type of thing. So, honestly, I don't really care that much about my channel being demonetized if they made me show up in the searches again. And show up in recommendations.
And the basic truth is the reason you got demonetized is because their advertisers have a political bias.
And I think that there's complicated reasons I was demonetized. I think it's because I kind of understand Google and their affiliates a little bit better than for their comfort.
Well, they're not silencing you. Like the monetization aspect, I feel like is mostly related towards like how their advertisers want to be viewed.
Well, no, it's complicated. Like they long before they considered demonetizing me, they deranked me, made it so you couldn't really find my videos in searches and all things like that. They do not want me, doing well. And I really do think like YouTube does sponsor content. They sponsored 25 million to news initiatives, and they also sponsored I think another 20 minutes. I would have to watch a certain video again to find the exact story, but I believe that they sponsored another 20 million towards content that they actually like. That I think it was political content. And so, I've been saying like the whole Contrapoints bread tube crew, I always thought, I'm like, these are YouTube's teachers' pets. This is something is going on here because it's just very clear. And, I always thought that like every time I'm sure of something like that, there always ends up being proof. And then eventually there was some proof. And so I do think that they actually have messages that they want to be spread and messages that they specifically want to silence. And I think that something that I've done in particular, like maybe for the fact that I'm one of the few people who will actually say media matters out loud, and have for a long time. Maybe that's it. To be
perfect. I'm agreeing with you. And what I'm observing is that they're following the same network model that CBS and ABC follow, which is the advertisers are who determine what content is preferred or not preferred.
I think that it's kind of the reverse. I think that there's people deliberately misleading the advertisers, and I kind of suspect, and I could list out my reasons why, but I don't want to get into them, that the companies are helping with that. Like we know that YouTube sponsors Vox, the with the crazy gay guy who came after Steven Crowder. Think about that. and he's horrible.
It seems like they're going closer to a network model, which is sponsoring or funding specific kinds of content for your network, which fits within. Again, the reason I bring up the advertisers is because you assume that that's where the bulk of their money is coming from. So that's who their customer is.
Yeah. Well, I think just the thing that I don't know how many differences of opinion we have. I just want to clarify myself. I think that the thing that's going on that's particularly interesting with the situation is that they're sponsoring active culture warriors, like culture war warriors who actively lie to sabotage their competition. And they sabotage people for political reasons, and then they come up with excuses. Like if you watch Contrapoints videos, about 50% of it is Contrapoints being misleading about their political opposition. That's basically all it is. Contrapoints is heinous. Vox is very, very similar. And you have to wonder, is it that they know that the advertisers don't want this stuff, or is it that they're trying to create, like they have this supply and demand problem of like legitimately problematic channels, and they're trying to boost the supply artificially to scare the advertisers with astroturfing? And that's what I think is a little bit more likely.
To scare them with astroturfing, what does that mean?
Astroturfing means, things like actors, people.
Astroturfing is fake grassroots movements. It's basically the simple version.
Fake grassroots movements. Okay.
Basically the shit that tore Occupy apart.
Right.
Yeah, and also like definitely, I'm not saying all, but certain people who have been associated with the alt-right and then like magically decided that they weren't anymore and they were always actors anyway, like Baked Alaska. what was going on there? You know what I mean? Like, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna move to Hollywood. Never mind. Like,
Can we just talk about Candace Owens for a second? Because I mean, if we're
Okay,
gonna
yeah,
talk about astroturf, come on.
no, I don't really think that she's necessarily astroturf. I don't think that she is. I think that I've talked about this before. If anyone out of the two is astroturfing, it is Tree of Logic. That's my theory. I haven't watched
Disagree.
I know. Yeah, Derrick disagrees with me. I haven't watched that much Tree of Logic. I just feel as if Tree of Logic spends an insane amount of time just being provocative pointlessly, like really pointlessly. Is very obsessed with trying to sabotage Candace Owens' career. And this whole thing where Candace Owens is going to flip and turn out to be an entirely fake conservative that was leading everybody on, it's not happened yet. She's actually gotten a lot better at speaking from my observation.
My observation, she's getting paid.
Oh, she's getting paid.
No,
She's
no,
getting
no.
paid.
No, when I say she's getting paid, I mean she signed a contract and her views changed based on the terms of the contract. That's what I mean by getting paid.
Well, I've started. I mean, I've started to believe
if
more.
We talk canned views, I have several other people I feel the same way about, and it seems obvious to me.
I don't think that Candace Owens went against her primary beliefs and allegiances. I think they shifted dramatically. She signed a contract and then ended up getting on board with a lot of things that she wasn't necessarily on board with before. That's what I would guess.
You just said what I did, but nicer.
Okay, but there's a difference between that and somebody who like really is not committed to what they're saying at all in any meaningful way. Like, you know, maybe like Faraday Speaks, who claims that he was he's the guy that the new New York Times ad was written about. Not ad, the story, the big, like, you know,
there was like a big editorial about him.
Yeah,
or whatever.
Yeah, his name was Caleb something, and he actually
that guy.
He has a YouTube channel. He doesn't strike me as entirely sincere as an individual. I'm planning on making an entire video about like why I don't believe a word that comes out of his mouth. And he's done these really dumb things. Derrick would be good at explaining this. He went on Stephen Molyneux after saying he had been this big fan of Stephen Molyneux's, but never saying why. And then randomly Contrapoints saved him and switched him to a progressive. And now he doesn't like the people like Molyneux and Lauren Southern. And then he even called up Molyneux and didn't know what he was talking about. And it was really obvious. Derrick, what would you say about that?
Well, yeah, well, what I did is I because it's from like a really long Q&A that Molyneux did, like a call-in show via Discord that was a couple of months back, or I guess maybe one month ago.
Which you'll have to link me with, by the way.
Yeah, and then well, I put a video on my channel, Faraday Listens, which was just the section of Faraday calling in, plus like a little bit of my just commentary on it. But he kind of what he would do is he would just switch topics really quickly as soon as it was obvious he was like losing the argument, and it was pretty obvious he was trying to get like a soundbite, you know. But
wait, hold on. I want to say even more so that it wasn't even just that he was losing the argument. When it appeared that he just didn't know what he was talking about at all whatsoever. And Molyneux was like, okay, if you're my fan, or I don't know if he ever actually said that, but he was kind of like thinking, that's odd that you don't know anything about this. It seems like you would, you know, and then he was just like, oh, let's change the subject.
What it ended on, it was like, well, like you and Lauren Southern have a video and you put this in the title and that means you think this or whatever. And it's like, it's just, it tells someone that they're really being disingenuous when they're more interested in kind of like framing what the other person is saying rather than saying, like asking them some questions to establish that. So, but every time that like I had a little back and forth with him on the first video response I made to him to his original video, and I was asking him like pointedly throughout the whole thing, like, what's the argument? Like, what are you actually saying? Like, can you point us in the direction? Right, you have all this attention right now. Like, you could be pointing to the actual arguments, and he'll point you to like the BreadTube Reddit in general, no particular video. He'll try to debunk all of like libertarian style or like Austrian economics by pointing to like a Sam Cedar video. Like it's so he might just kind of be that dumb, but but what it comes down to is like he really can't give you the argument, you know, whereas like I don't know, like anytime I've had like a big change in my views, like the argument's the really exciting part, and that's the thing that I want to like share. I'll say, hey, look at this thing I found, like look at this video, look at this point, here's a timestamp, you know. I want to like shortcut people directly to the most pertinent thing that needs the most scrutiny if it's wrong. But he's kind of doing the opposite. Instead, he's really flamboyant about the conclusion, but not so much how he got there.
Show your work.
I would say not at
your
all. I would say not at all about how he got there. Like he just doesn't, you know, it's basically just like I got into this stuff because like, you know, I was kind of down in my life and it seemed, you know, hopeful to me in a way. And then, oh my God, Contrapoints. She spoke to me. She spoke my language. I mean, we're about the same age as each other, and she knew the memes, and like it's just so not particularly believable.
My favorite is like Ramsey Paul did a sick burn on it when he did his video where he's like, boy, 26, was radicalized by YouTube.
Guys, I don't know about that one, but you know, the thing is, it's like with this guy, it's not even that he's bad at expressing himself. Like I have made countless videos about why I no longer consider myself a progressive and exactly what is wrong with these people. And then later on, as I became better researched, what is wrong with the political worldview that inspires them to be like that and how it leads people towards being like that. And I've also, as I've gone on, like I initially stated I was critical of the alt-right, but I didn't really feel like I knew that much about it. And then I've made now 3 videos being critical of the alt-right, and you know, one of them is really just politically like how this is just not a good idea and it never really could be. And I can do that. I don't like every time I discuss the alt-right, there's always somebody being like, oh, you just don't understand the alt-right. But then they never really explain it. And but I question a lot of that. And like it's like, okay, that sort of sounds like, you know, what intersectional feminists say. Like to me. But at the same time, I can at least express things at all. You know, and like maybe, yeah, I'm a trained writer and everything. So it's going to be better than this young person who doesn't seem to have much communication skills, but he doesn't do it at all. So
yeah,
and like,
I mean, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say his big thing is he wants to create like a platform where he brings on all of the leftist YouTubers because he feels that YouTube is dominated by people who don't think like him. And if only they could just figure out how to do this thing where you have conversations with each other and then you put them online and then people discover other people that way. You know, like Matt, he thinks it's like this algorithm voodoo, right? Like every crack the code. If only the leftists could figure out how that works, right?
Well, he specifically said, he was like, well, the thing is, the way that people get radicalized on YouTube is that they all talk to each other. And so then they learn about each other. And then they go down to their channels and then they find the other channels. So I think the left needs to figure out how to do that. It's like, oh,
yeah,
you,
it's
you mean
autoplay, right? He doesn't even have to click.
It's like, wait, you mean that the left has to actually, one, be friends with each other and like each other, because that's already hard by itself. The left hates each other in general. You know, like,
yeah, problem one, just infighting forever.
Yeah. Oh, did you guys see that Cat Blaque wants to like apparently join the BreadTube clan and like maybe get her sponsorship back or something? She has a whole video about called "Why Is BreadTube So White?"
That's adorable, Cat. You have fun with that.
Oh, it's hilarious. It is hilarious. And then Faraday Speaks has already made a response to it. And I'm going to be making a video about that. It's going to be like, Cat, your little sponsorship, you know how she actually used to have like a pink or blue screen in the background, and she had little like basic graphic animation stuff. And
Oh yeah, she had like a professional contract as far as like the arrangement that she had in her content creation. Like she had like Ms. Blaque is compensated X amount as long as she provides these services or meets these expectations contract.
Clearly, I mean, I haven't actually heard her say that. So like, but she would brag about meeting with the YouTube board. And like one time I called her teacher's pet on Twitter, and she's like, I had said something else. And she was like, well, I don't know about all that, but I am teacher's pet. Yes. Like she literally said that. So it's pretty clear, but the thing is that she got called out for being, racist, homophobic, all these things. And it was actually clear that she said some things that the big people would actually think were problematic. Like she had some very disparaging things to say about Jewish people, about Irish slavery, and trying to perpetuate the very, very vehemently and dishonestly perpetuate the notion that gay men constantly grope women. And she was like putting people on blast on her Facebook timeline about it. And then I started looking at it, and it was she did that like once a week. And sometimes she would entirely dox people. Like she had this guy, a screenshot of him writing her a private message, and I guess it was probably Instagram or something, because below it, I don't use Instagram, I don't know what avenue that he was writing to her, but below his name said his employment. It was it said Imperial Heating and Cooling. I probably shouldn't say it because the photo is still probably out there. Well, Cap, and what he said to her was, wow, you're probably the most racist person I have ever seen in a long time. And he was white, and she screen shared the message, and you could fully see his face where he worked. And she said, I can't wait for all of these, for all of the supposed Mexicans to come over from the south of the border and steal all these white people's jobs. So that is very clear that she is implying that people should try to get this guy fired. That was like back during the era where SJWs just did that all the time on the internet and didn't think.
Oh yeah, I remember those days. Like a lot of. If I'm not mistaken, that guy did get doxxed and fired actually.
Oh, so yeah, I made a big deal out of that about Cat Blaque. And remember when Magog of Mork made that video message to Susan Wojcicki or whatever.
However, Susan, what you call it?
Yeah. Susan W.
Ms. W. Yes. I'm guessing she probably doesn't want people to know that no one wants to deal with her ass. Anyway, so yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah, so I was in it and I was like, Susan, could you maybe stop hanging out with Cat Blaque? She doxes people more often than she makes content. Even RuPaul had to block her on Twitter, which is true. She has written about how RuPaul was anti-Black. And she said in a video that literally, I quote, I don't know, it just seems like RuPaul is almost a white person in blackface. And RuPaul lives in LA and he is powerful. Like he is like on top of the gay power, like gay mafia ladder, because he's the biggest star on Logo. And he's been around for a really long time. He had videos on MTV. He knows everybody. And so it's all that type of stuff that is probably what ended her sponsorship. And now she's like, but you need more Black people. So I'm going to make a video about, I'm like, here's the reason why it really isn't working for you anymore. You know?
It's kind of like, here's a few places you might have fucked it up.
Yeah. It's like, I don't think it's because you're Black. I think it's because you got a little comfortable with all that privilege that you got.
Yeah, you got a little comfortable and a little bit too vocal too often about all that special shit that you were getting. And they don't like people talking about it like that, because then someone else who's maybe not as liked but technically has the same deal wants to cash in those chips. And now what do you do?
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. I work in a software company. I'm not going to say the name of my employer or the clients, but we have clients that get better treatment because there's more money or they're important in the game. Like, if we mess up that client, we might have less people in their state willing to work with us because, oh, well, if you did them dirty, I'm a quarter of the size of their company. You gotta respect brands, but you also gotta know to shut your damn mouth when you know you're getting extra. Because if you squeal, you'll never get extra again, and they'll probably just find a way to get rid of you. No, like that's real talk in the corporate world. That's how it goes. If they give you a good deal and you go yakking about it, then they'll just never work with you again. Like, you'll basically get the corporate version of 86th.
Yeah, I mean, think about how much money RuPaul brings in to YouTube. There are so many videos about RuPaul's Drag Race on YouTube. I'm not expecting that you've searched for them, but try it. And they get lots of views.
I've watched a lot of RuPaul's stuff, not because I'm necessarily like super into like Drag Race and that stuff. Because I mean, I think it's interesting and stuff, but I have a lot of friends who are interested in it, and I've ended up watching clips or even like an episode just because I was socializing and they wanted to watch that. So I was like, hell, I've always wondered what all the fuss is about. And it's pretty interesting. It's not really my thing, but I do find it very interesting.
Yeah, this is a good segue. Let's talk about a little bit towards the gay culture stuff, because I've never really discussed this stuff a whole lot with you. I do know that that there's more than just twinks and bears. But
oh yeah, like I mean, I kind of had a Joe Rogan moment, but not nearly as clever. Some of our first few conversations, like after streams, where we would all answer our stupid ass questions that we'd been scared to because we had the anonymity of the screen. You remember those days back when I was still with my old crew?
Yeah. Who shall not be named on stream.
Yeah.
It's not even really worth mentioning that they were a thing, and I also don't want to swear.
Fair enough. Well, I mean, I was more just kind of alluding to it that way because don't give people attention if you don't want to give them attention.
Yeah.
That's that simple. Moving on. My position with my experience with the gay community has been very interesting because I grew up LDS Mormon in one of the highest concentration cities for LDS Mormons.
LDS Mormons.
Yeah, Mormons. LDS, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Latter-day Saints, okay.
Yeah. That's the Mormons. They don't like being called Mormons anymore, but it's the more commonly used term outside of their culture.
Okay.
So I grew up in that, and so my first actual like association with someone who was openly gay and was someone I actually knew their name and like knew them as a person was when I was about 16. Because down in Utah County, especially the smaller towns like I was in, if you were, you didn't tell anybody. It was kind of like Utah County is about 30 years behind the rest of the country, because in a lot of ways they are, as far as like cultural change when it comes to different or unusual behaviors. That's how they would consider homosexuality, transitioning, all of that. Utah County is very 30 years behind on anything like that. In fact, there are some people and some, like, I guess, sub pockets and communities that still question whether or not, if you're married, you're allowed to use a condom.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Well, they have some really messy doctrine. Because they believe in the Bible, but a lot of their non-Bible doctrine does not line up with the Bible necessarily. But it does seem to line up a lot with, mid-1800 sensibilities. Weird that, isn't it?
By the way, if you are just tuning in, I noticed that we have some more people. Could you please hit that like button and consider doing the whole subscribe star, not subscribe star. We'll do that too. Come, that would be great. But the Streamlabs thing, if you have a question for me, I'm checking it periodically. That being said, I believe you know this. I was not raised religious. I only went to Catholic church for about 2 years with my mother because she had weird motives for going, and I was never actually expected to be Catholic, really. That's really my only real experience with it directly, but certainly Spacepan, and I forget Lordy's exact, you know, experiences with religion. But do you guys got anything to say right out of the gate?
Well, I was raised in a Christian church, and I went to a private school up until the end of 8th grade.
Okay.
Yeah. What
Spaceman?
are we?
I went to a mix of public and private schools, but yeah, I used to be more like evangelical Christian, and then halfway through high school, I became you first go agnostic and then atheist, and then yeah, and then since then I've kind of I've kept the door open if there's any any kind of argument or justification for a belief in God, but there sort of isn't one by definition because if it's faith based, then it's based on not reason or not evidence. And I guess I don't really see any way around that because the thing that makes humans so interesting is the fact that we reason, is the fact that we look at things, we make inferences, and that we use logic. So to me, it just seems like the overwhelming, just like momentum of everything that's great about being alive points away from religion.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I've expressed this before. You always say, "Oh, nobody's agnostic," and then I explain sort of like what I'm like, and you're like, "Oh, I guess that's fair enough." I think that you've accused me of being an agnostic atheist or something. I believe that
I see agnosticism as a subcategory of atheism.
Okay. Well, I see my views are that I believe on a deep visceral level due to weird psychedelic drug experiences which had me feeling like I entirely left my body and went forwards and backwards in time. And there's actually an explanation for this. I mean, it's not an explanation in the way that I can say why this happened, but there's similar stories about this. The one that is most similar, and it's almost entirely similar. It's like he's describing the exact same thing that happened to me. Is the writer? He mostly writes comics, as far as I know. Grant Morrison, and you guys can look it up. Look up Grant Morrison explains the psychedelic trip that changed his life, and it's really weird because it's like, wait, that's exactly what happened to me. And he's completely reasonable about it. He talks about how, at the time he felt like he was maybe with a bunch of aliens and then he went backwards and forwards in time and blah, 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 maybe through a different dimension and then came back and saw the world entirely differently, blah, blah, blah. That happened to me. And it was after I did I think a bunch of LSD. It was on sugar cubes. And the thing is about LSD is that you never know how much you're getting at all because it's such a tiny, tiny chemical. And I don't remember exactly what happened to him that put him into it. I think that he smoked hash that was like laced with something or something like that. But he's been accused of thinking that aliens took him backwards and forwards in time, and now he thinks he's a Christ-like figure. But it's like he was like, that was sort of what I felt at the time, but now looking back on it, I don't think that at all, and I don't think he ever like fully thought that. So it's really worth listening to him talk about that because he's a writer I really identify with, and I identify a lot with the stuff that's in his comics, mainly in the original, not the New 52, but there was a series called 52, which was a DC thing. He did some really cool stuff, and it was a 52 week, like an issue every week that had all of the heroes in the DC universe incorporated into it. And then he also had a comic called The Invisibles, which was pretty cool too. I didn't have as many issues of that though, unfortunately. So, you know, yeah, there's an explanation of things that are like that. And so now my views are basically, okay, I do strongly believe that there's something out there, and I would not at all be surprised if there's a God. I just feel like I don't want to call it a God. I want to just think of more of a like, it almost feels like a universal formula for existence is the best way for me to describe it. But I'm totally open to the idea of a god or gods being involved in it when you think in terms of the galactic systems and that type of a thing. And, you know, the idea that potentially, you know, species evolve into energy creatures, perhaps even maybe when we die, we turn into an energy being, and you know, like humans are just sort of the larval phase of that. Like it's just things like that, like could totally be true to me. And then we learn a lot more about the nature of the universe. I'm really, really not sure, but I'm open. So I don't want to say I have any sort of religious belief, but it feels like something like that to me.
I strongly support the idea of non-human intelligent life that naturally evolves according to a formula for life in different conditions too, because we can't expect that all life evolves in the same conditions that we do, and we can only look for those conditions in order to find life, but that actually life will evolve regardless of the conditions. And it's been observed time and time again. If you go to the deepest places in the ocean where there's no light and there's no oxygen in the water, and it's just vents from the inner earth releasing tons of minerals and chemicals, and there are totally completely alternate forms of organisms there which could not survive in the
Anywhere.
environment anywhere else.
Yeah, and there's, I think, in, you know, there's entire ecosystems. Like there's bizarre predators, there's bizarre scavengers, there's bizarre plants. Like it's really weird.
And so there is, in my mind, absolutely non-human intelligent life that has evolved as long as us, maybe longer, and we can't necessarily anticipate how they might look or act or communicate. But that's why you have to be open to something different in order to detect, you know, perhaps the attempt of a non-human intelligence to connect with you in some way.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm the spiritual party pooper. It's all bullshit and it's all bad for you.
There was nothing spiritual in what we were talking about, to be
Oh
perfectly
no!
honest.
Well, I mean, in my opinion, the concept that you're utilizing, while it's not exclusively or by absolution a spiritual belief, the concept of a there is a formula for life, regardless of how complicated it is or isn't, doesn't seem to coincide with what you were just describing, in my perspective.
How
Now,
so?
The and what
I can
mean by
hear it
that-
in its choice. Jordan or Lordy, sorry, is mildly not okay with this, but just
Hey,
mildly.
hey,
Let's
Lordy.
hear it out. I just want to say that I'm good at hearing the tension in his voice. It's rare. He's a very nice guy. So
I say, Lordy, I don't mean any disrespect, and I just don't want to leave the conversation friends, regardless of our difference of opinion. I'm just expressing why what you said I don't subscribe to, and why I feel like it has markers of a faith-based process.
or maybe
And
maybe more like it doesn't register with you as something
it
that
doesn't. It registers as something that doesn't seem easily replicable. Which replication is, in my opinion, one of the more important aspects of the scientific process as a whole. Is if you can replicate a thing, then you can state that, okay, we have a pattern, we have proof, X X does lead to Y, or if X leads to Z, why is Y out of the equation?
Okay, but you need to be more specific. What's
I was
not being
trying-
replicated?
The what's not
I
being
understand
replicated
what
is
what
this
scientific
formula of
inquiry
life
is.
thing.
Yeah,
The
okay.
formula
Okay,
of life thing is just it feels like you're using something incredibly vague as a descriptive answer. Here's the thing. I'm also very open to the fact that there's probably intelligent life that evolved completely different from us somewhere in the universe, maybe closer than we realize. I don't know. I believe it's possible multiverses could exist. I'm agnostic. I don't think there's a formula to the universe, but if someone finds and proves it, I got your back. As soon as you can prove something, I believe it.
Okay. How about this?
I don't. That's
how about this? And I was just trying to like avoid, like, I don't think that you guys are necessarily mad at each other or anything. I just want to make sure it doesn't get to that point and that we're communicating clearly.
I'm not mad.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, absolutely not even approaching there. I'm just making sure it didn't. No, not just anymore. I was just, and I think that everything is fine. So I think that a good compromise of the way that we're going to talk about this, and tell me, Lordy, if you agree. I think that this idea of the life equation, and in DC Comics, there's actually an anti-life equation. It would not be mathematic based. It would not be chemical based. It would be something that we literally probably cannot understand. It would be using universal formulas, like universal matter things that maybe only like maybe there's this life formula that's put into our universe from wherever our universe came from, be it a deity, be it a different universe that ended up dying, and then somehow it resurrects itself into a new universe. Like I really have no idea, but it has this one thing about it that is unknowable, and all of the matter and the physics and everything is entirely separate from this one different dimension type thing, which would be the life equation.
See, I don't like the unknowable thing. I understand what you're trying to get at. When I hear unknowable in this type of discussion, that to me registers as a faith-based system, or at least a faith-based statement. If you say it cannot be known, I was like, yes, it can. We haven't asked the right question. We haven't done enough work. There is a way to find an answer to every question. It's just how committed are you to getting to it, and how much resources are you committing to getting to that answer? You know what I mean?
I understand. I understand that viewpoint. Now I do want to say that oh god, I had some other thing along the lines of that. Oh, well, what about calculating pi?
I mean, there's value to it depending on the scale and an implication when you're using it in an equation. As far as do we know we're accurate? I think that in a way you could actually do tests and proofs of pi. Actually, I know that you can because I had to do that a very long time ago when I was in high school taking a calculus class. We had to prove a constant, and we couldn't use any other constants. I thought it would be easier to prove pi. Turns out it's not easier than a lot of them.
Doesn't the decimals extend sort of forever?
Theoretically, every possible sequence of numbers could be replicated in pi if you took it to enough points past the decimal. Yes,
but we haven't gotten there yet.
We haven't needed to. Necessity is the mother of invention, and I'll stand by that my entire life. Like I don't know how necessity would ever no longer be the best motivator for innovation.
Yeah, but okay. So this is the final question. What if it turned out that we dedicated our contemporary supercomputers? They actually used to have like old 1990s supercomputers trying to calculate pi, and they never got to it. What if they did it and they discovered it just seemingly continued to go on forever, would that change your belief about these unknowable things that could potentially be something like a life equation?
We know how to replicate calculating pi. Which decimal do you want to know? Which one?
No, but like, what if if it just goes on, if it's trying to calculate and it just goes on and on and on and on and on, like they run it for 5 years and it just still goes. I'm just saying.
It doesn't. It. Are you familiar with the concept of significant figures as it relates to mathematics?
No.
Significant figures means past the decimal, there becomes a point it no longer matters.
Yeah, that's a calculus concept. I never took calculus. So, yeah, I know, but at the same time, it has been mathematically proven that the space between spaces is the infinity between infinities, the inward infinity instead of outward infinity is.
Atoms are mostly empty space, is what you're getting at.
Yeah, and
yes,
it keeps going and going.
And I agree. It's mostly empty. Like everything in the universe, including the devices we're using to communicate and us, is mostly empty space. We're not exactly sure why, and we've still not come up with an answer for why, or is there something there that we don't know how to recognize?
Yeah, and okay, final question. Absolutely final question. I think we should change the subject. Have you done a lot of psychedelic drugs?
A fair amount, yeah.
Like what?
Acid and shrooms mostly. I've never done DMT. Peyote once, but not my proudest moment. Someone stole it, so I wasn't like in the proper like ritualistic setting for the peyote like you're supposed to. Okay. I didn't know that they had regulations about that and that it was part of their culture and it was important to them at that time. I had no idea. I just wanted to do drugs.
Okay. So what I would say is out of the chemical that reliably gives you the transcendental, I don't know if transcendental is the type of word.
The experience you guys have described with it.
Or that I have described and that Grant Morrison has described. I don't know if Lordy has actually had this experience, but he's certainly explored the chemicals. I would say that the only one that reliably does that is DMT. And I actually suspect that somehow I ingested some amount of DMT on sugar cubes, but I don't know if that's possible. So everything changed about how I saw the universe just that one time. So that's my last thought on the issue. And that's why I have this like weird like feeling that there's things that we don't know, because there was this instant where there is all these unknown things that felt like it really did feel like I knew them in a way that had only been ever possible that one time.
Okay, here's the thing, Prince. You're right. I've never done DMT, so it's an interesting theory. And if I ever decide I want to try DMT and test it, we can revisit the topic at that time. But I feel like kind of the final point on this subject, because I don't want this to turn into that kind of stream.
Yeah.
Is we have dramatically different perspectives and we both communicated them, so I think it's kind of no need to continue beating the horse.
Yeah, that's why I want to change it. So yeah, okay.
But I mean, I do appreciate and respect that people have different opinions, and if I believed I was right all the time, I would have no interest in communicating with humans. Just being honest. Like if I believed I could never be wrong, and then there would be nothing interesting to talk to most people about.
If you believe,
you know what I'm saying? If I believed I was incapable of being incorrect and that I knew everything, I would not have any interest in talking to people.
Yeah,
I call it the maybe space.
Hey, and that's an interesting theory. And you know, I would love to find out. I'm not the right guy to test these theories, but I would love to find out from whoever the right individual is that knows how to approach and test and ask the questions, because I want to know what's in the maybe space.
My favorite is this crazy person called Church of Entropy. Has her whole thing where she thinks that because energy is always conserved, that when you die, this basically leads to a proof for reincarnation. And then, I don't know, she like hates goats, and she thinks that everybody who insults her or makes fun of her is going to get reincarnated as a goat.
That's funny.
That's wow, that's interesting. I don't know. Reincarnation's a weird one for me.
Like I'd probably annoy her really quickly, and then she'd put a curse on me and then leave.
Oh, I mean, you just heard my little back and forth with Prince and Lordy, so you know how well I'd get along with her. I mean, here's the thing. I love question and answer when it comes to subjects that only one person knows about, because that's how people learn. So I'm very interested in the theories you guys are talking about. I just don't really know how to feel about my opinion on those theories. I don't know as much as you guys do on those theories.
Yeah, I just wanted to have a sense of like what your what grounds you're standing on personally that is forming your opinions, so that I feel as if I understand that better about you. Like Lordy's somebody that I've had deep talks with about these type of things repeatedly since we first met in around 2014, and so it's like I knew where he'd be coming from, but I just have never talked to you about that. So
yeah, it's I mean, it's not something that necessarily I like pursue as a conversation subject. It's more so just something when it comes up, I do state my opinion. I used to, just real quick, because I know it looked like Lordy had something to say too. After leaving the Mormon church, I never really considered religion again. I was just kind of like, I don't want to put all that time into it to feel like this again.
yeah, no, and that's more than fair, which is why I think we should actually change the subject.
Yeah, sorry.
Now. So anybody talk to any feminists recently?
Well, the other big news was
okay.
was that America might go to war.
Tell it and carry out the big news while I'm sort of on my deck smoking, and I might be popping back in to say something real quick.
Okay, I'm really interested in the big news, and then I'll tell you guys about the feminist interaction. It wasn't very exciting.
Oh yeah, the big news was just that America is maybe going to a war with Iran.
Oh yeah. The not missile strike that looks a lot like a missile strike. Yeah, it's a possibility. I mean, I think Iran would be absolute idiots to jump into that arena, because the U.S. spends and has just more than everybody else. It's just, I don't think anyone actually goes to war with the U.S. anymore. I think people are paid to make shifts that make other people money. Like, because the U.S. literally has enough firepower to eliminate every single military on the planet, including itself. Like,
yeah, I mean,
it's
that
the U.S. is like a lifted truck, man. We've got 60-inch tires on this truck. That's how badly we want you to know we have a big dick as far as the military versus what would be necessary. Just saying.
Right. I mean, I guess the problem is that it's not really conventional war, right? Like, it's not even like it's two forces fighting each other. It's basically just America blowing its load and wasting all its money, and like there's never any real terms or any real achievement from these kinds of conflicts. Like, it seems like in general the public's very very tired of it, you know.
Well, of course they're tired of it. They're sick of seeing homeless guys on the streets that they feel sorry for and feel like they should help, but they never do, because they come back fucked up and they're on pain meds the rest of their life. And now you're an opiate addict, because that's what happens if you're on pain meds in America these days.
It does seem like, rather than having an open war, I would imagine that there are covert operations happening right now, and have been happening to neutralize any, because you can just, instead of assuming that the entire government and people of Iran want to go to war with the US, which is unlikely, it's probably a faction or a special interest group within that country that is making, shaking a stick and trying to drum up some kind of drama. And instead of going to war, it's going to be happening in the most sanitary and compartmentalized way possible.
I agree with you in principle. I think that it more than likely is a faction and probably not even approaching the majority of the populace. I think the majority of the populace would rather just not be at war with anyone. I don't think they dislike any other country as the general whole enough to say let's go to war with them. Just like the general American populace doesn't want to go into another war at all. Like generally speaking, I bet if you pulled just 1,000 people from each state and you average it out, it's going to be a pretty low percentage. It's like, yeah, fuck it, let's go to another war. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's because if you look at the rhetoric of Trump, he's very making it clear that he has nothing against the people or the government, but he didn't really say that they're not going to take some course of action. Of course, they're going to take a course of action, but it's not a political course of action.
Right. And the important thing I think that we need to remember, because this isn't just isolated to any one president, is the president has their Secretary of Defense and the generals who have their cell phone number and see them probably daily in the majority of cases. Like you'll have the Secretary of each branch, which is basically the highest. It's the highest position that any service member usually makes it to. Is you can be the chief officer of your branch, but the secretary of the branch is almost always a retired high-ranking officer. Like a 3-star general is the secretary of the army right now, former 3-star general. The former chief of naval operations, which is technically the highest admiral, is now the secretary of the navy, et cetera, et cetera. It's always people who have been in for a very long time. Those people meet with the president daily. So when the president's making a speech on that, their speechwriter and that general or admiral has told them things they can and cannot say, such as, we will be taking action, we will not be taking action. You never say that shit. That's like the first chapter of The Art of War. And The Art of War is mandatory reading for officers in the military, and there's been discussion in the past of making it mandatory reading for even senior enlisted service members. So, I mean, it's Tactics 101 that he wouldn't say whether or not there will be action. Like, when you say there will be action when you're military, that means the missile's in the air and it's too late for him to get out of the building. That's when you tell them you're going to shoot him. When he can no longer escape.
Huh.
Yeah,
Tactics
I
101.
think we're corroborating each other.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm agreeing. I'm just adding to from my own perspective as a veteran.
Yeah, I think that I was watching Tim Pool's weekly the end is nigh video. He always has one. Like, it's always like there's going to be a civil war, World War III. Oh my God, you know what I mean? But I mean, it's not that he's
5G's gonna melt children's brains. There's something every weekend for him.
Yeah, and it's like, he has something to go off of. He's not making it up. But I do kind of wish that he would maybe tone down the catastrophizing, but at the same time that gets views. Though I noticed that a lot of the time when he does make those videos, he gets less views. I think just because people are like, dude, you're kind of sounding a little bit like We Are Change here, and that's why we stopped watching him. We've been waiting for global apocalypse since last decade from We Are Change. And so but the thing that he was saying that was particularly interesting is that and this is what I end up thinking more and more, is just the changing scape of war, and things like hackings and other types of things. The idea that we know for a fact that people from Africa are making the trek down to South America to come up through the southern border and things like that. Like, there's nothing to stop Middle Eastern radicals to do that, and they have in fact been apprehended trying to do that. And since the number of people crossing the southern border has increased so much, that's a very big concern. And so there's all of these other angles. Like, if you look at Iran, as a nation. Like you pull up a map, and I'm gonna just test. I don't think I'm gonna be able to screen share because it keeps not letting me. Yeah, no, it's not letting me. Sometimes it does, usually it doesn't. But if you pull up, I want you guys in the audience to go ahead and pull up a map of the Middle East. And if you look, the only countries that have a significant amount of coastline, and coastline is what makes nations most able to thrive, because that means that they can directly import and export goods without having to go through somebody else. That also means that there's fishing and things like that. And so it's a lot easier to make a fully developed nation. And Iran actually has about the same as much, if not more, than Saudi Arabia, and is also slightly north. So it's going to be a little bit cooler there. So if you've actually seen pictures of Iran compared to other Middle Eastern nations, it's the greenest seeming. It has the most modern development just out of all of them, as far as I really know, whereas a lot of the other ones are really dependent upon import-export, particularly oil. Iran has a lot to lose, in particular with like actual physical war, so they would probably just naturally use other means. And we're not just going to war with Iran, but maybe even more importantly, their allies. And so that's why it becomes so confusing.
Right. I understand that, and I just, to me, it doesn't seem likely that it would be an open war. So basically, I pretty much just directly agree with what Lordy was saying, that it's not going to be an open, tanks down the streets kind of war. It's gonna be a lot more like Gaddafi after he backed down on his wall of death. There's going to be a lot of really small skirmishes between specific parties.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a lot of catastrophizing on the news, and at the end of the day, certain people will end up either seizing power or being removed from power, probably by the end of a gun.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
I mean, I hate to say about the Middle East, that's pretty much been the song. Basically, since humans figured out we really like the stuff we can do with the whale. Pretty much since then. So, the Industrial Revolution, the first one. Yeah, pretty much since then, the Middle East has been a cloak and dagger war pretty much the whole time. I mean, no one can figure out the Gaza Strip, for fuck's sake. No one can figure out who owns it, who should own it, and why or just why we shouldn't kill each other over it. No one can figure out what the right answer with that situation is to this date, and that shit's almost as old as President Trump, as like his human lifetime. It's been going on that long.
Yeah. I had another thing to I'm thinking we kind of got sidetracked because I kind of wanted to talk about gay culture a little bit, because
yeah, we ended up in the Middle East, so basically the opposite of gay culture.
Yeah. But the thing was, I actually am interested in hearing a little bit about your experiences with such things, because I am thinking that I'm going to take a visit to Salt Lake City and try to see if I actually like it at all, because I'm considering moving out of state, because I just think it's going to be the best thing for me for a variety of reasons. And one of the things I want is to be in a purple city. I want to be in some place that is, used to people that are like me to a certain degree, but I also don't want to be I certainly don't want to be in a blue city. And so, a liberal city within a red state, or that's probably the only thing. I don't know if there's any real conservative cities in a blue state that I would ever consider wanting to like just randomly move to. So I'm thinking of, places like Austin or Salt Lake City or something. And so I want to hear some stuff about that.
Okay. Well, from my experience, you're a blue or purple in Austin, you're a red or purple in Utah, but there is a whole lot of variation. I mean, in Salt Lake City, you're a red or purple, but there are very I would say almost like microcosms of a lot more how do I word this? A lot more open and comfortably homosexual kind of cliques and social and like social groups and stuff. And I'm really sucking up my words right now. Fear does that to you. But yeah, the gay community is a lot more public, and a lot more generally accepted. And in my experience, the most open that I've ever lived in long enough to really like get the lay of the land of more than just where I lived, my neighborhood. The most open place I've been was Seattle. But Salt Lake City is not the least open I've been for even just cities of around that size. Because the Salt Lake City, like if you count the Salt Lake metro area, is a few million people. It's nowhere near as big as somewhere like Seattle, Austin, or even Charleston, South Carolina. Their metro area is technically larger in total population. But I feel like it kind of, a lot of it comes down to who you associate with and where you associate with people as far as public gathering. Because there are some places where I've seen like feminine, like all the way blue to feminist propaganda on T-shirts on the staff at some of the coffee shops around here and a bar or two around here. But I've also seen people unironically wearing Trump hats and it not being a thing. And the thing is, these two venues are maybe 10 miles from each other. The two examples that I thought of offhand. So it's very much where you go and who you talk to, but I think it's a lot more accepting, and I think than anywhere else in the state. I also think people are more genuinely curious if they're not part of if the gay culture or LGBT, whatever you want to call it. Like if they're not participants, if they're straight and cis like myself, they're probably just gonna have a fuck ton of questions for you, because a lot of times people feel gatekept when it comes to those topics if they're not part of it.
Well, I will be popular with those people apparently. Because they got questions, I got answers.
Oh yeah, I mean just try to avoid getting tokenized, because
yeah, I'm good at
some
that.
of the Beckys of the world really do try that as soon as they figure out any guy that they know is not gonna fuck her.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of everywhere. I'm very used to it, especially, I went to university in New York City. And so like all the girls at my dorms and crap, it's like, I know that whole story.
Let me put it this way. If she has long hair and it looks nice, she's probably a Becky, or was at one point that looking for a gay BFF Becky stereotype. Yeah. In Utah, if she's white and has long, well-kept hair, she probably wants a gay best friend.
Okay. Well,
and here's the thing, it might even be for good reasons. It might just be like, I would love to know a guy's perspective of dating guys. Like, it might be for altruistic reasons, but you are going to get gay BFF'd all the time, and I'm going to want their phone numbers.
It's so eager for me to check it out. Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with. I like the idea of. I feel like if I went and I met a Salt Lake City feminist, they'd be like, "Oh, cool, you're like a tattooed gay guy. Where are you from? You're probably not from here." I'd be like, "Seattle." They'd be like, "Oh my god, I've always wanted to move to Seattle," and I'd be like, "I don't know, it's not that cool." They'd be like, "Why?" And they'd be like, "Well, here's the thing. I'm not a feminist. They'd be like, oh.
Oh,
No, they would say, oh, why not? And then I'd be like, well, if you actually lived in the hotbeds, had a considerable amount of experience with these people, you know, like I grew up in the gay neighborhood with a mother that was a feminist, with sisters that were a feminist, things like that. And you go to the alternative high school, that's where all the homosexuals go in the 90s, and you start to have a different perspective, because I imagine that, you know, and it's a place like Salt Lake City, there is a lot of things that you could that wouldn't be entirely unfair to refer to as patriarchy. Whereas in Seattle, it's just gone. There isn't anything like that at all. And yet the women are even more angry and more looking for things to be offended by. And so you get to a certain point and you're realizing, wait, what they claim to want is unobtainable and things like that. And I kind of feel like Salt Lake City feminists would be a lot more receptive to that than the feminists that I meet in Seattle and, you know, San Francisco, who are basically just like, oh, well, don't you know that feminism means equality? And it's like, yeah, I kind of know a lot about it. And they're like, oh, no, you don't. No, you know, and it's like, I feel like people in some place like Salt Lake City would respect that I do have a lot of insight that they don't.
yeah. I think it's because there is a lot of cultural blending going on in Utah right now, but historically it has been very conservative. But a lot of our generation is not really hype about that conservatism.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have a lot of people with younger ideas that they're living on, if that makes any sense. So it's like, it's not a concrete 30 years of their life, it's been this way belief system. It's a younger idea. It's something that they've been working at and operating on for only a few years. Those kind of people you can still have a dialogue with, regardless of where your perspectives land at that moment. So that's part of the reason I think the Salt Lake Valley is really good for someone who is atypical when it comes to their belief systems. Because if you're typical, just go where your type's set. You're set. But if you're atypical, like I believe myself to be, and from my experience with you, you do seem to be quite atypical for the stereotypes of your demographics. You know, being gay and being white, you don't have the standard narrative of a gay white guy that most people are used to.
Yeah, I would say, and you know, I haven't really been to Minnesota, where Spaceman is from, but Lordy and I both know for sure, and Seattle's the same way, that there's almost no such thing as legitimately atypical white gay guys in San Francisco and Seattle. They're just all just like, if there was I don't know what the word for like a Becky that's a white gay guy is, but they're just all that. Basically, I mean, a lot of them try. What?
Like a Sammy.
Yeah, a lot of them. Nobody's named Sammy. What are you talking about? I would say like a Jason. They're all named Jason. But like, yeah, nobody is like there's the hipster ones and then there's the non-hipster ones. But aside from the fact that the hipster ones are actually more obnoxious and do like drink more and use more drugs and are like, but they're all equally vapid, all equally boring, and they all have the exact same political views. Care to comment?
Fair
Lordy?
point.
Care to comment, Lordy?
Yes, I'd be interested to hear Lordy's feedback on that.
Oh, sorry. What I was briefly went to the bathroom.
So we were talking. He was saying that there's a lot of cultural blending in Salt Lake City because there's a lot of kind of like new, I guess, leftist type culture blending into an otherwise conservative area, and people are getting very used to this type of idea. And so if I were to be atypical in Salt Lake City, that would actually be exciting to people. They would want to know about that. And I'm like, yeah, because that's cool, because it's not like that in San Francisco. It's not like that in Seattle. Everybody is exactly the same. There's basically no difference between the white gay hipsters and the white gay normal guys. They all have the same political views, and the only difference is that the hipsters drink and use more drugs and dress differently.
Yeah.
There are venues that are like that in Salt Lake Valley, though. I mean, just to be real, but as a whole, the culture is not like that. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, that's refreshing to hear, at least that you might be able to have an atypical view, and people would be at least could at least be amused by your opinion. In San Francisco, if I bring up anything that is outside of the typical left rhetoric, then it'll shut down the conversation. I think people here are so politically traumatized at this point that they won't even attempt to argue. Like, they have no more argument left, but they also just don't want to talk about it at all because they've somehow painted themselves into a corner.
Yeah.
And I almost, out of just compassion and a little bit of pity for them, I just don't subject them to having to come up with ridiculous reasons for why they believe the things that they believe. And because of my nature in more of a therapeutic sense, I'm actually just trying to help the people who have who have lost their souls to leftist ideology, that actually the sky is not falling. Like, things are not that bad. Like, we have less war now than we've had in a really long time, and it's a good thing that we're standing up to China, and like and no, the whole world doesn't hate Trump. It's actually just you leftists that hate him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love the guy. I think he makes mistakes. And his ego is not my favorite thing in the world. But I don't hate the guy. I want him to succeed because the president being a good president means the United States does better as a country. Okay, so like, I'm very much do the best you can, screw up as little as you can. But when you make it stupid, I might point it out. But I do that the same for every president. I mean, a lot of people I knew growing up, when Obama became president, oh my god. Now, mind you, when he got elected, I was just getting out of high school. That was my first presidential election I participated in. I voted for a fictional character because I didn't like any of the third party. No, I didn't know the third parties well enough to cast a vote for them, and I didn't like either option from the primary parties. So I wrote in a fictional character's name from World of Warcraft because I was a juvenile teenager.
I was guessing it was going to be like Chihulu or something.
No, I really did consider putting down Cthulhu, but several of my friends in this kind of like quasi-edgy meme lord group that's composed almost entirely of skateboarders, because I was into skateboarding as a kid, were posting the meme that we were going to vote for which video game we were going to use, and it was going to be, and everyone was going to vote for the villain of that video game. And we had a poll, and everyone voted, and that's how we decided we were going to vote for Thrall Hellscream. It was either him or Tony Hawk was going to be who we all voted for.
Tony Hawk is the villain. And
no, Tony Hawk is a professional.
No, I know, but
Tony Hawk is the villain of Tony Hawk Pro Skater because because why did you need to turn it into an RPG? We just want to pretend to skateboard. We don't want to role play. We want to skateboard. Well, the later Tony Hawk games were.
Oh, that's
Tony Hawk.
awful.
Tony Hawk Underground came out that year.
That's weird.
So we felt really betrayed.
So Tony Hawk is the villain of his own game.
Tony Hawk Pro Skater has been kind of an institution of extreme sport video games since like '94 was the first one. So that was on the original PlayStation and later the Nintendo 64.
I was so good at Tony Hawk 2 that everybody in my entire dorm would like not play with me. They're like, "Don't even try." It's not even worth it.
Oh yeah, I was that kid too. Like the neighbor kids got an N64 and everyone was playing Super Smash Brothers. My little ass was I inherited my cousin's PlayStation when he got a PlayStation 2. And he had Tony Hawk 1 and Tony Hawk 2 and one of the Final Fantasy games, and that was all I played.
Spacepan, you were gonna say something?
Oh, I just thought the idea that there were like RPG elements in the later games sounded really funny. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's one of those things where they were starting to see declining sales numbers with each generation, so they wanted to try and branch into another market, and it didn't do so great. But I think they had another title in the series. I think it's like Tony Hawk Pro Skater like 8 or some shenanigans at this point. I think it was like 3 years ago, and it had really meh reviews. Like professional and user reviews were very. It's a game. It's not awful, but I don't really have a whole lot of criticism or praise. It's just kind of milquetoast at this point.
I'm just reading the plot for Tony Hawk's Underground 2, and it's amazing. The protagonist is skating in their hometown, a neighborhood in New Jersey, when a van shows up in the middle of the ramp, and the protagonist slams into it, knocking them out. 2 people wearing hockey masks kidnap the protagonist and take him to a dark room with other skaters. like
I mean, okay, it's amazingly cringy, but I ain't paying money to play that game.
Margera. It's Tony Hawk and Bam Margera are the people who are in the hockey masks. This is almost as good as the plot synopsis for Leprechaun 4.
Oh my god, dude! I totally forgot about Leprechaun. Just that whole franchise of just. I mean, some people need to be told no at some point in their life. Whoever wrote Leprechaun 3 and onward is one of those people.
Yeah, right. Like after the 3rd one, everyone's like, "Okay, that was literally a second Electric Boogaloo. Can you stop?" And they're like, "No, I'm going to outer space. Screw you." And like, "Okay, now that you're going to outer space, are you done yet?" They're like, "No, now we're going to the hood." And it's like, "What?" Like,
and it's like, wait a minte. So you went from outer space to the hood. Where you going next?
the hood again.
16th century France. No. Please. Okay. We got to delete that. If there's another one and they time travel, I will not be held accountable. I will not.
Leprechaun in Syria.
That's just called Jinn, dude. I've already seen that movie. It's called Jinn.
I haven't heard.
It's it's not in English. You gotta read subtitles and stuff. But yeah, I since I was spending some time out there, I was curious about their culture, and I totally legally transferred information that equated to watching a video from one device to another that happened to belong to a different person, and watched a bunch of foreign films while I was deployed to the Middle East.
Oh my god!
Honestly, I think the Middle East has better horror than we do. Their horror movies are better.
I should check some out.
There's a Leprechaun 2014 and one for 2018. There's one that came out last year.
Oh my god, no, just
so happy.
Stop! You're killing me.
Oh, I communicated.
Now I want to know.
I communicated on Facebook. A friend of mine, he ended up somehow interviewing the original actor who played Chucky. He was like a little person. And
oh wow, really?
Yeah, and he made friends with him on Facebook, and I was like, oh my god, that movie scared the crap out of me. Like the first one, because the first Chucky is scary, and he wrote a comment that said, "Wanna play?"
Nice.
I think it was actually "Wanna play" with like 15 A's. So, okay, we're ending the 2-hour mark. But I feel like we could acknowledge the comments. I'll take a look at my Streamlabs, which Thanks for nothing, guys. But
I don't know how to read, Prince. I'm sorry.
it's okay. Wait, what? I'm not sure what you mean. But okay, so I'm gonna
I tried to go open your Streamlabs and I couldn't figure it out, and I was getting distracted. So
oh, don't worry about that. You know I'll be on your ass later. So let's see. Anything interesting in the comments or from the comments or in the questions that you guys might want to talk about? Is there anything that we're looking? I still need to watch Chernobyl because I just canceled my HBO Go subscription because it charged me, and I didn't realize it was going to charge me like $18 this month. I thought it was $9. So I'm like, oh hell no! But I still have it until early July, so I'm going to be looking into that.
Let me know what you think. I have very strong opinions about that movie, but I was a nuclear mechanic, so very
Okay.
strong opinions. But I don't want to talk to anybody about it that hasn't seen it, because I feel like if you haven't seen it, I'm just going to sound like I'm diatribing, you know?
Well, and I'm not interested in that aspect of it. I'm interested in the communist aspect of it.
Yeah, and again, since I haven't finished it yet, because I'm watching it with someone else who is also a nuclear operator, and we've thought of recording it, but we don't want to get sued, so we're probably just gonna do like a one-shot stream where we talk about it. So that's still TBD. I mean, her and her wife are pretty newly married, so I really don't want to take up that much of her time and burn through it in a weekend. You know what I'm saying?
Oh no, yeah, whatever. God, I feel like there was some other thing to bring up about something kind of.
The most important thing is that Evangelion is on Netflix now.
It is.
That's important weeb news.
Does one of you have a Netflix, an actual Netflix account that you're not like getting from your parents or cousin or something?
No, mine's my my best friend at work. He uses my HBO, I use his Netflix. That's a great relationship.
I was talking to the guy at the gas station today, and he was like, yeah, I imagine there's like about 10 people in the entire world that actually signed up for Netflix.
And you know what? We should only select from that list for the next president.
Yeah.
Because that motherfucker can keep secrets, okay? Because they're not going and putting everyone else on blast for the weird shit that comes up in their search history on Netflix. Because like your recommendeds are based on movies you watch all the way through, or episodes. It's all based on that. That's their algorithm, is matching genres, or actors that were also in what you just watched, or directors that were also on the project that you just watched. That's how they recommend. So, in my opinion, got to be a Netflix account holder to run for president next go, because we've been too loosey goosey with who we let run, and we didn't have a winning option this time around. So now we're stuck with the meme in chief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If we get some real qualifications involved, maybe.
I mean, I had to prove that I was in the military several times just to get my current job, because of software, and like they have weird rules that I'm not sure are industry rules. They might be company rules on who they hire. And so I had to prove a lot of shit. Like, they're very pedantic on, if you say you worked somewhere, they want to know when to the day if you remember, but at least to the month. They want to know who your supervisor, their supervisor was, what your job was, and how long before your first raise. They want to know all that shit.
Wow. By the way, Thuggy, thank you so much. I got your donation by way of PayPal. That's very awesome. But if you had a question or something, we can go for a few more minutes, because we had started late anyway, and I don't mind at all. So what else? God, is there anything interesting to talk about? Oh, I just want to tell everybody, that I am now in the business of starting to dabble in social media management for other people. So if you have any idea of anybody who wants like a remote social media manager who can type 1,000,000 miles a minute and really knows social media platforms, knows what's hot on the social media platforms, is good at hashtagging, is good at all that stuff, and is good at coming up with ad campaign coordinated efforts and stuff. Like if it's maybe a small business owner that doesn't really have like an advertiser but needs somebody to be operating the social media end of the advertising, I think I would be an excellent candidate. So yeah, let people know about that.
Hey, email me a CV or resume for that.
Yeah, I will.
If you need it, I can send you my email on Twitter, but I actually may have some contacts. I'm not going to promise anything, but I may have some contacts of people that would at least be interested in hearing more than just the elevator pitch.
Yeah, cool. I will absolutely do that. So, haven't heard anything from Thuggy in the what does anyone oh, you know what you didn't say, Raph? Let's close out with this story, is the feminist experience.
Oh, the feminist experience. Okay, so so like I said, I work in software, and as kind of part and parcel with what I do, there's a lot more people that went to a typically considered liberal school in the software industry, or at least in my experience with the 3 different software companies I've worked for over the years. So we had a we had a training that was mandatory and done en masse on workplace stuff. Not really sexual harassment specifically the topic, but like workplace ethics and stuff like that. And this is just something we do on a regular interval. It's I think usually twice a year. And it was just that time of the year. So I go to this training, and this young lady, who I don't really interact with, she's part of a different segment of the company, asked the presenter a question, and it was in some way in reference to privilege, and is there any company program that addresses the disparity of employee experience and not just our customers, because our customers are small businesses to 100 rooftop businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Rooftops being what we refer to locations as. So
really,
hey, some people don't put that together. They think that just because the company has like a really big campus, that counts as several rooftops. It does not.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Actually, I didn't entirely understand. Yeah,
it's one operation locale is what we refer to as rooftops.
Okay.
Because our clients sell things. I just want to be careful about going into detail. You know how the world is.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she asked if we have methods to de-escalate when there is an issue due to someone's circumstance of birth, and he kind of looked like dumbfounded, like she was speaking French to him. Now, mind you, this was a senior executive. He's probably in his late 40s, if I were to guess. If memory serves, he's a native to Utah. So, as you can imagine, a white native to Utah in his late 40s that's been in like the corporate world his entire career may not know how to address something like that. And what I said was, do you think maybe this is a topic to bring up in an office privately and directly with someone in human resources? And she was like, do you think this is a topic that I wanted a man's opinion on? This was in the meeting in front of like 60 plus people. I don't know her. Like I said.
How would you guess?
23, maybe 24.
my God.
Yeah,
I sincerely hope that she doesn't manage to keep her job somehow for very long, because that is just absurd.
I mean, here's my thing. I believe that the company is trying to not say that we're like, okay, so we're not, our clients are not customers. We don't have stores that would be in any kind of shopping center. We provide services specifically to a specific industry. So our public image is not nearly as important, because you're never going to get a receipt from something you paid for out of your personal checking account. Okay, from us. You're just not, because again, businesses only.
Sure. But that's not the point.
But so we don't really have an official narrative like other companies. But if we did, it would probably be bluer than red. It would be more blue than red, if you get my drift. So
oh yeah, sure.
So like when she asked that, and when she said that to me, I just said, I apologize. It's like I just said, I apologize if I misunderstood your meaning. This just sounded too specific for this size of group, and sat down. And the presenter thanked me and immediately launched into the next point that he had to present.
Okay, that's a good way of handling it. It's just, I mean, that level of that's so inappropriate for work. Setting a precedent that it's even remotely okay to speak to coworkers like that is completely absurd. And you just, that's just something that it's so damaging to a workplace environment. It's like, like, hey, raising your hand, hey, by the way, I'm a problem. Like, you will run into several conflicts with me because I'm hostile to other people based on things that they actually literally cannot change.
Right. And I mean, in my opinion, would it have been appropriate for them to take action in her case? Probably. I didn't file it because the people I would have filed it to were in the room. So I thought, like, there's no purpose in me making any more of this than it already is. The meetings are recorded. Everyone is supposed to either attend or watch the video for the meeting. I literally don't have to do anything about it, and I don't care what happens with her. I just, like, here's my thing. If she gets removed for that, that really sucks for anyone who depends on her. And I don't want her to be in that position for an outburst. Yeah. But at the same time, if it's for the betterment of the company to get rid of her, then I just hope an intelligent decision is made. Yeah. And that I don't have to be involved, because I don't want to be. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
What I would do if I were in a management situation is I would sit her down with both a female and a male manager and take turns talking to her.
And try to see if, like, maybe that wasn't even a genuine feeling. That was just an outburst because of circumstance. Really kind of as unbiasedly as possible.
What was the opinion that you gave again?
I just said that this seems like something you might want to discuss privately and away from the setting of a presentation with someone in human resources.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. And that's the idea of trying to somehow snap back at you and put herself in a position where she gets to be your giver of discipline is just completely unacceptable. It'd be like, that's a situation where, I mean, a manager should be like, excuse me, young lady, do you know what your job is? You know what I mean? Like,
well, I mean, I don't even know what her job is, and I don't know that she knows what mine is.
Okay. Maybe she is in human resources.
Oh, she's not. I know she's not.
Okay.
We don't have a ton of human resources people. Mm-hmm. And they're all very personable, and the company is very, I would say, adept, almost over-exercising the behavior of making sure that people feel welcomed when you're new to the company, and like when regime changes have happened, like leadership changes. Mm-hmm. There's been like I swear it's almost like gospel at the office that if you're someone's boss, they need to have shaken your hand, talk to you about something both work-wise and even only moderately work-related. Have a personal conversation with them, and you should recognize them instantly at any point. If they can make a decision on your behalf and they don't have chief executive in their name, you should recognize them without second thought. You should be familiar with them and know something about them. That's a huge part of our culture at this employer. So I know that she's not in HR because HR is people that can affect me, and I've met them.
Yeah.
They make a point of they meet everyone. They do their best to meet literally everyone in the company.
Yeah. It sounds like the person giving the presentation agreed with you. I really, really hope that if this type of thing happens again, somebody does file a complaint to her, and just say, like, it's not because she's male, it's not because she's female, it's that she's acting like she gets to order me around.
Yeah, I mean, if I don't have I have fairly thick skin when it comes to people that I don't know. It's easier for me to detach from experience if I have no reason to believe they're capable of causing me harm. Because I mean, this is an office. If you try to physically hurt me, there's so many cameras. I'm just gonna sit back and laugh.
How many people work at your office?
This location about 350.
That's
the company is about 1,000 people.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's so we're like a mid borderline, like right under the cusp of considered to be large software company. We have locations in 4 states and 3 countries.
It just makes me wonder what type of, where did she get the impression that she could be like that at work?
I'm guessing a women's studies professor that has never worked a day in the corporate world.
Yeah.
Like I'm not even trying to be like ha wrecked feminist. I'm serious.
Oh no, yeah, that's probably what it was. It's just, I mean, or maybe they're like reading feminist blogs about how, corporations,
or even a Facebook post. Shit, I see them all the time.
Yeah, but like, a feminist blog about how corporations are doing these more feminist things, or somebody got fired, or blah 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 blah, and acting like it's all a good thing,
Right. I actually I just totally realized one of my smoking buddies, she's one of the executive assistants, well, or whatever. She actually is relatively feminist. I don't know that she would necessarily call herself one, but she behaves a lot like a younger Hoff Summers, but not all the same beliefs necessarily. So, like, we've had a lot of interesting dialogues, but it doesn't register as, oh, I had an altercation with a feminist when I talk to this person. Because her and I can open dialogue about our disagreements and just be like, well, I think it's kind of messed up that you think that after you explained why you think that, but I still appreciate your friendship kind of situation. Like, sometimes it'll be like, oh, I really didn't like that you said that, but we can still remain friends,
Yeah, it kind of sounds like the difference between like decent enough person who happens to be a third wave feminist and then a fourth wave feminist. Third wave feminists still kind of said, I am woman, hear me roar. Fourth wave feminists say, I am woman, lick my boots.
Yeah. I hate to say it, there's almost a corollary pattern in Mormons. You have your Peter Priesthood Mormons, is what we call them. Those are the people that if it's not in one of their holy books, because they actually have several, then you shouldn't do it. And if their bishop, which is a pastor equivalent, if their bishop says that they shouldn't do something, then that's God's will and they have to do what they were told. But on the other half, there's the ones that understand that people don't live like them, and if you ask them about the church, they'll probably tell you about it. But if you don't, then you wouldn't know besides the obvious traits if you live in Utah. because if you live in Utah, like, and they dress like they might be about to walk into a boardroom, but you know they don't make that kind of money.
Yeah,
They're Mormon. Period.
Yeah, no, I've heard about those Mormons. Yeah, everywhere. I don't really meet them in Seattle. I've met a number of the type of Mormons that I think the less like the more the non evangelical ish types. And they're really nice people, like really exceedingly nice people. And it comes up a lot because there's like these weird things where it's like, oh, I don't drink caffeine. Oh, sorry, I'll have a no duels, you know, like crap like that.
Yeah, those are what I call the good Mormons, the ones that are like that.
Yeah.
And then
really,
you mentioned
they're
Jack.
really nice is the thing. Like they're like excessively nice, and they're interested in understanding other people. I've in my experience, like everybody who's like that I've met.
The best Mormons are the ones that don't live next to primarily other Mormons.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think echo chambers, regardless of category, are toxic, and you create really awful people with echo chambers, whether it's a political, religious, or racial even. Echo chambers cause problems. Isolationism does not work. That's why Wakanda makes no goddamn sense.
That's like what makes sense? No sense.
Wakanda makes no goddamn sense.
Oh,
Black Panther.
Yeah.
Isolationism never bred technological excellence in the history of humanity. Unless you're saying that the Wakandans are also asterisk not human, then your argument is flawed to the core. Now, if you're saying that no, they're not human, then yeah, okay, there's other factors to consider now.
But that's
no
going to open
human
up
culture.
That's going to open up a whole new can of worms.
Oh yeah. Why do you think I'm comfortable saying that around you guys, but I wouldn't say that around Molyneux?
Yeah,
I don't want to invite that thought. I don't want to hear where he's going to take that.
Yeah, I don't know much about Molyneux. Like he's just someone that I don't. I look at him and I hear him talk, and it makes me not feel good, and so I stop. And
let me put it this way: he race baits as hard for white people as Jesse Jackson race baits for black people. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
Okay, we might have a fan a little bit, and a fan that I've told that we do not discuss white identitarians on air. That is
okay.
actually
I actually
channel. We'll talk about no, it's fine. We'll talk about them in passing, like if there was a certain happening with them and blah 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 blah. We don't get into what our feelings are on such things on air because it's just such a can of worms, especially for me being somebody that actually lives in Seattle.
Fair enough. So yeah, off that one. Didn't realize. My bad.
Yeah, well, with Molyneux, it's more of a guilt by association thing. It's really not things he actually says himself that anybody points to, really. And he's fundamentally, libertarian, like ANCAP. So
I thought we weren't supposed to go into that because.
Oh, I was just clarifying his point is all, because he's not like a white identitarian.
I don't agree with that. That's why I said we should drop the subject.
Yeah, that's because I watch him and there's enough things that I consider him to be a white identitarian. Like he's not afraid of speaking about these things and very like there. I know that there's like these little okay. Here's a good. Hold on.
Okay, how about the
no. I am allowed to say whatever I want. All right.
I know. I'm not trying to police you. I'm trying to help you not go down that direction.
No. I'm good at summing it up. Okay.
Okay. Fair enough.
So I am more than aware that if you talk to somebody who dabbles in the white identitarian sphere, they are more than happy to bring up the differences between a white nationalist, a white supremacist, a neo-Nazi, blah, 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 blah. There's all these little differences and a race realist and whatever. There's a similar thing. I know it's not a parallel, but it's somewhat similar when you're talking to leftists. They have Marxists, they have the postmodern Marxists, which they usually will never admit that they are. They will have the Marxist-Leninists. They will have the radical feminists who are basically Marxists and were inspired by Marx and blah, 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 blah. I as a rule, and this is sort of as a rule on my channel, I will talk about all of the leftist stuff. I have no problem doing that. But I do not give a F. I do not give a fuck. I'm allowed to swear. My channel is demonetized. What it is, if it's even vaguely associated with that stuff, it is off limits in talking about it in depth. And that's just the rules. And it's not because of the reality of it or not. It's not because is there a good point in discussing whether or not he's libertarian, blah, blah, blah. Maybe there totally is. Just it's not going to happen on my channel because I do not want to be targeted for being somebody that talks about that stuff, period.
You know what? That's smart. And I'm not going to name names for their own sake, but there are several creators, and you and I have talked about it off air before.
I imagine we have
that have done the same thing for similar reasons. So I entirely respect your position on that direction.
Yeah. And there's some people who haven't and who've been like, well, no, I think I can be this, but no, and it's like, then they get known as all of them. You know what I mean? So it's like, no, I'm not doing it.
I was gonna say, I was told that I'm the Naziest hipster ever, even though I don't like either side.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of it. I was like, excuse me, what? There's like, I was making a joke about you being bald, and I figured you'd already heard everything else. I was all like, okay, that's fair. That's fair. You tried. That was way too far, but you tried.
So, okay. I think that's actually a good time to end because we've been going a little bit longer than 2 hours. But
we have indeed.
I have stuff to say specifically to Lordy if you're actually still around, and I have stuff to say to Wrath. Though I assume he actually kind of knows what it is, so maybe I don't really have to say it to him. So I will talk to you guys all later. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you very much for the donations. I very much appreciate them. And that will be all for this week's Gaytriarchy. Ding dong.